So, episode 7. Hopefully you will be able to notice that the set has changed, as promised in the last video, and that hopefully the two lights, proper camera, microphone and audio recorder are making a difference to your viewing experience. This is all, like I say, a big experiment. We have no idea how effective or how much of a difference it will make, so we're just going to have to roll with it. Let us know if it's better. So, in 1898, H.G. Wells released a book called War of the Worlds. You've probably heard of it, it's very, very famous. And it is one of the most adapted and reimagined stories ever put to paper. There have been films, albums, radio dramas. Many of these adaptations have changed the settings or character or plot quite a bit. And since there have been so many, this means that you get a kind of whisper effect from adaptation to adaptation, where each one removes itself a little bit further from what the author originally intended. Before making this video, I mentioned the book discreetly to several friends, and while the reaction was generally positive, people liked the book, or liked the adaptations they'd seen, they all came back with statements like, oh yeah, that's the one with the tripods, right? Or, yeah, Tom Cruise was in that film when we were kids, remember? Very few of them, in fact only one, mentioned what I thought was the key theme of War of the Worlds, which is colonialism, and why it is such an awful, terrible practice. For those of you unfamiliar with the story, War of the Worlds supposes an alternate timeline in which Martians land in southeast England in 1898. They are few in number but technologically much more advanced than the local population, and this allows them to achieve a rapid and all-encompassing dominance over the people of Earth. England, and it is implied heavily, the world, has been colonised. In the end, the Martians are defeated by infection, but that's not particularly important to the video, that's just important to the story. This tale is obviously inspired by European imperialism in foreign countries, and the treatment of the indigenous populations of those countries. Wells doesn't even lightly infer this. He, at many points, says, if you are A, outraged, and B, English, you have no right to be. This is exactly what your society has been doing for hundreds of years. In 1898, most people in the UK either supported or didn't really have an opinion of colonialism. They'd lived in a society that had benefited directly from it, and their country didn't tell them a large number of the horrors that imperialism had wrought upon the other nations in the world. This means that this book, being written at that time by somebody who had benefited from that system, makes War of the Worlds a genuinely remarkable novel for more than just its science fiction inspiration. Further to that, why does nobody remember that part of the novel? They remember the tripods and the heat rays and the cool science fiction bits, but they do not remember colonialism. You could make an argument for antiquity. The book is 122 years old, and so perhaps people have simply forgotten its core message. So let's take a more recent example, shall we? In 1995, phillippullman released a novel called Northern Lights, the first in a trilogy known as His Dark Materials. Now, this is another book/series that has been adapted several times since its release. Obviously much more recent, so there are fewer adaptations, but it's had a film and a TV show, and I think definitely an audiobook and maybe a radio thing as well. Now, Northern Lights tells the story of Lyra, a child who lives in an alternate Earth that is dominated by a totalitarian religious government called the Magisterium. It also presupposes the idea of human souls and consciousness having physical manifestations in the form of demons. Lyra's adventure results in her confronting state-sponsored experiments to separate children from their demons, from their souls. This experiment or process is called intercision in the books, and is based on some poorly understood pseudoscience and a religious ideology, original sin. This story tells of one person's struggle to unearth the origin and source of human consciousness, and of how the state desires her exterminated simply for asking these questions. It is, again, a remarkable book that is made only more remarkable by the fact that this is technically a children's story. His Dark Materials asks us, or forces us, to question a great deal about human consciousness and how that interacts with the societies in the world. It also examines how those societies can exploit our weaker aspects and force ordinary people to commit horrifying acts of cruelty in the name of an ideology or society. But it also tells of how humanity's inherent humanity is the only thing capable of overcoming those doctrines. So why is all the discourse I see around this novel online about what animal your demon would be, or whether or not you get into Jordan College? Even in the fan base of this series, I don't see those key messages being discussed all that much. And here, unlike in the case of H.G. Wells, one cannot make the argument of antiquity. The book is only 25 years old. Surely if people were going to notice and explore those themes, they'd be doing it right now. I was talking with a friend the other week, a very intelligent person whose opinions I generally value very, very highly, and they come out with the following statement. The purpose of media is to entertain. If it achieves anything else, well, that's just a bonus. Now, if there are any art, literature, or film students watching, I'm sorry if you just coughed up your quinoa-infused ginseng tea, but that is how a lot of people in the world view media and art consumption, for entertainment. Now, I'm not from a moment suggesting that every mainstream film or YA novel has some deeper meaning that we must unlock by interrogating it. Reddit already has that covered. I am saying, however, that if we focus too much on the concept that media is only for entertainment, we're going to miss a huge portion of the messages in those pieces of art. War of the Worlds has been adapted so many times because it is a really engaging story. But could that story have still been so engaging and the commentary on colonialism been left intact? And sure, it's fun to complete 30 BuzzFeed quizzes in the dogged pursuit of trying to get a Lynx as your demon, but can we not also discuss the very valid points around totalitarian doctrine and religious fervour? So, like with many of our problems as adults, I think we have to go back to school, or more accurately, education, to understand why we have this issue. Most of us, throughout our education, are taught to compartmentalise our disciplines. We are taught English literature without the history surrounding the novel. We are taught science without the ethics of the practice, which can cause some problems, as you'd imagine. This means that when we are left to our own devices in the wasteland of adulthood, we tend to consume things for a sole purpose. I wish to watch a film to switch off, or consume a book to consume a book. You can scran a book quickly. Or read a book to escape for a while. Rarely are we encouraged to take a holistic outlook to our pursuits, and this includes the media and art that we consume. We may read a poem that speaks to us on a linguistic level and never realise that the intended message is one of societal injustice or class oppression. This single-track view of art can lead us to pass by, if not the whole message, a huge chunk of what the author intended, or the creator intended for us to see. However, everything that I've said up until this point may have you thinking that this disconnect between creator and consumer is all the fault of the consumer, and this could not be further from the truth. In those relationships, there are rarely only two parties involved. Films have studios, authors have publishers, artists have dealers. This means that often what is conceived at point A is not what is consumed at point B. And this is doubly true for adaptations. In the 2005 Steven Spielberg War of the Worlds, he probably sat down with Paramount Studios and made the decision at some point that people would be more interested, it would be more marketable and thus more profitable for people to consume a film that starred Tom Cruise running away from aliens dramatically and Dakota Fanning screaming a lot, rather than present the original thesis on imperialism to the largest empire that has ever existed. This means that there is a third party present in most artistic endeavours, one that will often neglect the original message in favour of a more profitable approach. Combining a profit-led corporate approach to art and media, and an audience who view it only for a singular purpose, and some of the greatest and most profound messages ever put to paper will fall on unwittingly deaf ears. Disney, you get Disney, okay? That's the end point. So this is one big experiment, and whether or not this new setup and new way of doing things works or not, I honestly don't know yet. We're just going to try it and put it out and see if people like it. But I hope you've enjoyed episode 7, and this, I think, will probably be shorter. The remainder in the series will go back to their sort of average 10 to 15 minute length, but this is a really important thing to consider with the next series being information. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this thoroughly. The weather is no longer relevant because we have studio lights, and wherever you are in the world, stay safe. We really hope that you enjoyed that, and if you did, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, because it's a huge benefit to the channel when you do.